2023. A year that shows the duality of video games in the video game industry more than any other. 12 months of banger after banger after banger in terms of artistic achievement. Meanwhile, the corporate side of the industry is dropping clangor after clangor after clangor, with mass layoffs of devs, punishing the people making games to keep profit margins high, because heaven forbid a board member take a goddamn pay cut. And while I could sit here talking about the need for unionization and how I hope gaming developers work together to fight for better rights for days, instead I wanted to focus on the products these hardworking individuals have gotten out the door in 2023. And because this year has been so stacked in that department, I decided to upgrade from my usual top 5 format and go all the way to a top 10 like a basic YouTuber. So without further ado, here are my top 10 games in 2023, and yes, this is my list, so if I haven't played it or didn't like it, then it ain't getting on it. Honourable Mentions. Before we get into the list proper, I want to talk about 3 honourable mentions for it. Firstly, Warhammer 40k Bolt Gun. Solid, short, and a lot of fun. Captures the brutality of Warhammer 40k very nicely, it's just a little too repetitive. Secondly, we have Hi-Fi Rush. If this was the 10 games I objectively thought were best top to bottom in 2023, Hi-Fi Rush would be on the list. It is a fantastic game. I just didn't vibe with it as much as the games that made the cut. Finally, we have Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty. In 2020, I included Cyberpunk in my list as an honourable mention as well, or more of a dishonourable mention. The game was a mess, but I still had a fantastic time on PC and said that it would likely become an all-time favourite of mine eventually, but I didn't include it because, well, it shouldn't have been released in that year. It's now 2023 and Cyberpunk 2077 is not only fixed, it's damn well beloved as it should be, an absolute marvel of gaming. This is how it should have been released, and it's because of the hard work that CDPR put into the game, I can now safely say that 2020 me was right. This is one of my all-time favourite games, and I fought with myself on whether or not I should include it on the list, but with all the games 2023 had to offer, I couldn't really put an expansion on here in good faith. Number 10. At number 10 we have Starfield by Bethesda Game Studios. Starfield. To say I have mixed feelings about this game would be an understatement. Now, Starfield gets a lot of hate online, and it doesn't really deserve all of it. Some of it, sure, there are reasons to dislike the game, and I was disappointed overall, but some of you are going way too overboard with the hate. Starfield's a perfectly solid game. It's about what you'd expect if you're a fan of Bethesda and see that they're making a brand new title, and that's unfortunately where I have an issue. It's no secret that I love Bethesda. I do, and I'm not afraid to admit it. I've even been accused of shilling for them before, if you can believe that. But I can't help but feel disappointed by Starfield. This was their chance to push the boundaries more with their titles, take the magic of their past games and bring it to the modern generation, and they just didn't. They did some great things. The score by Inon Zur is arguably the greatest asset of the game, so much so that I think it's a crime it didn't even get a nomination at this year's Game Awards. The world building and lore are fascinating, much like any other Bethesda world. It feels well lived in and like it's alive. Sadly, you can't explore and immerse yourself in Starfield's world as easily as other Bethesda games. With every jump, landing, building / cave being a loading screen, it cancelled out any immersion I would have exploring, arguably what makes a Bethesda game so great. Bethesda Game Studios have been making the same game since Oblivion, and most of them amazing, and while Starfield is good, it's not great, and the latest Bethesda game to not recapture the magic. It's solid enough, but feels like corners were cut, and having wanted a Bethesda sci-fi game for over a decade, it wasn't quite what I was looking for. Number 9. At number 9 we have Super Mario Bros. Wonder from Nintendo, and this is honestly a game I have very little to say about. It's a Mario game. It's fun, it's cute, and it's just exactly what it says on the tin. It's a really solid title and one that I've yet to finish because I'm not a huge fan of Mario games. I'm not the target audience for Wonder, but I still appreciate what it does and can just relax and play it casually when I'm bored. I like the world-shifting mechanic and the little flower dudes who just talk in the background though. I can't help but smile whenever I see them. It's just fun to break the trend of my usual gaming habits now and again, something I think more people should do. Number 8. At number 8 we have Star Wars Jedi Survivor by Respawn, and honestly I'm a little shocked it's this low. I like the game and I'm a massive Star Wars nerd. I think it's a really solid sequel to the original game, but at the same time it just hasn't stuck with me that much. I think it's probably a timing thing, as Jedi Survivor was sandwiched between some massive games for me this year. But yeah, I have nothing really bad to say about the game. It improved upon everything the first game delivered. Combat was better, the story was better, the action sequences and the all-around Star Wars feel were better in my eyes. Most of all, the traversal was way better, no longer being an active flaw of the series. It just wasn't super mind-blowing or impactful like the games above it, nor was it a mixed feelings game or even a disappointment like the titles below it. Star Wars Jedi Survivor was good, and that's why it's here. Number 7. At number 7 on the list we have Lethal Company by Zeekers. I love a good co-op horror game to goof around with friends in, and Lethal Company blasted its way onto the scene and into my heart with its amazing blend of horror and shenanigans. I don't think I've laughed quite as hard in 2023 as I did when playing Lethal Company for the first time, and while that is of course mainly down to the company I had while playing it, the game's excellent mix of spooks and comedic timing is something I found myself wanting to dip back into more and more. If you have a PC, like horror games, and playing games with friends, Lethal Company is a must-try. So much fun. Number 6. Continuing on the horror train, we have the Dead Space remake by EA Motive at number 6, which completely blew me away when I played it over the Halloween period. I had never beaten the original Dead Space back when it came out because I borrowed it from a friend and didn't have time to complete it. From what I remember, however, I wasn't the biggest fan due to how it controlled on the Xbox 360. That honestly worked in this game's favour for me, because I played it on a beefed up gaming PC with high quality graphics and audio, and I was taken on a journey. While it had some sequences that were stupidly difficult compared to the rest of the game both before and after it, something which I will forever hate in a video game, the atmosphere and audio design as I walked through the Ishimura was so cool that I couldn't help but be invested the entire time and blasted my way through the game. Number 5. At number 5 we have ourselves the Resident Evil 4 remake by Capcom, which I admittedly thought would be a stronger contender than it ended up being. I had a lot of fun with RE4 remake back in March, but unlike many of the other Resident Evil games where I've gone back to and completed them multiple times, I haven't found myself inspired to do so with this one. I haven't even touched the DLC yet. It's really good, don't get me wrong, but it didn't captivate me in the same way that other recent games in the franchise have. I know some people don't like the Resident Evil remakes because of how they changed the originals, but to me that's what a remake should be doing. Mixing things up, modernizing the game, and trying to take the framework of something old and make something new and hopefully better. Resident Evil 4 had quite the challenge for itself there, since it's a remake of one of the greatest video games of all time, but it succeeds in nearly every department. I'd argue that overall, it's about on par with the original in my eyes, if not ever so slightly behind it, and that alone is a huge success to me, and I hope to get around to it again sometime in the near future. Number 4. At number 4, we have Marvel's Spider-Man 2 by Insomniac, a title which ever since the Game Awards has become somewhat controversial, with fans of the game adamant that it was robbed of various categories, and others relishing in the disappointment of those fans a little bit too much. Personally, I don't think it was robbed. I even made a full TikTok discussing it in detail, going category by category to see what it was up against. Spider-Man 2 was simply outclassed this award season, but that shouldn't take away from how good it is. It earned those 7 nominations, getting more than both a Zelda and a Mario game, and regardless on whether or not it won any, the game is still very good. I had a blast playing it, and while I can agree it could have been longer and less rushed feeling in the third act, an issue that Miles Morales also had, this weird influx of hate isn't justified. Yeah, some fans of this game need to play more titles, I can agree with that, but you need to put some respect on what Insomniac has done here. This is their 4th title release for the PS5, if you count the remaster of the first game, and they haven't missed once. Would I have preferred just getting one fleshed out game? Maybe. But we simply do not see studios put out this level of quality at this consistency anymore. Their Marvel world is absolutely incredible, and while I think Yuri Lowenthal was 3rd place for that performance award people claim he was robbed of, he's still quickly becoming my definitive voice for Spider-Man in the same way that Kevin Conroy is Batman for me. He's great as Peter Parker. Is it a perfect game? By no means. We've talked about the length of the title, but I also think Venom and Kraven were very good, but could have been a lot better utilized. Regardless, these games keep getting better and better, and Insomniac continue to be a day one dev for me, and my 19 inches of Venom is a testament to that. Number 3. In at number 3 we have Final Fantasy XVI from Square Enix, and man, this is easily the Dark Horse Game of the Year in my opinion. Not enough people have given this game its flowers, or even a fair shot that it deserves, and honestly, I think the blame is mostly with Final Fantasy fans. Or well, some of them anyway. A lot of the open-minded ones are pretty cool. I tend to stay away from fandom in general these days. I find that, especially now, fandoms are ironically just cesspools of hatred and toxicity directed towards the thing they claim to love, and the people who love it, and oh boy, if that ain't Final Fantasy. The "it's not my Final Fantasy" debate surrounding this game because it dare not be an ATB or turn-based system is ridiculous, and I think it has genuinely stopped a lot of people who would have tried and enjoyed the game from doing so. Which is a shame, because this game is a banger of a Final Fantasy. Why? Because it's about just that. The fantasy. The story. A group of well-written characters trying to save the world from destruction. The series isn't called Final Combat like some dodgy Steam game for a reason, because it was never the most important part of these games. They're fables. Tales of adventure. This game has great writing and great world building, an incredible English cast of actors, including my favourite performance of 2023 in Ben Starr as Clive, who carries the game on his back and quickly established himself among the Arthur Morgans and Kratoses in my eyes, in terms of my favourite video game protagonists. He's that damn good. Then we have a masterpiece of a soundtrack written by Masayoshi Sokun that rightfully won awards and brought me to tears at points, and not to mention hands down the best boss fights I've ever experienced in a video game. My only two issues with the game are the side quests being too heavily weighted towards endgame, which slows down the otherwise great pacing, and a poor crafting / item system that isn't as customizable as it should be. That's it. Everything else was phenomenal in this game. If you have a PS5, play Final Fantasy XVI, give it a chance, it's fantastic, and also it's coming out on PC I believe at some point, so if you don't have a PS5 but have a PC, check it out there instead. Number 2. This was so close, man. At number 2 we have Alan Wake 2 from Remedy, and when I say this was down to the wire, I mean that I fully decided on this finishing second the day I recorded this. It was so close to being my game of the year. Alan Wake 2 is one of the most unique and brilliant titles I've ever played. I absolutely adored this game. Remedy are among the most creative developers around right now, and their ability to blend mediums like they do in Alan Wake 2 made it a game that has stuck with me ever since I beat it for the first time. Both halves of the game are incredible. They divided the story across two protagonists, and it made it so the plot never once got boring for me, with both Alan Wake and Saga Anderson having pretty unique mechanics that I honestly hope we get to see more in future Remedy games. Saga has an awesome detective gameplay, where you piece together mysteries on a caseboard inside her mind palace, while also profiling and interviewing suspects, and a full game about that would be an instant buy from me. Then Alan Wake's side of the campaign has him appearing on a weird, creepy talk show and altering the reality around him via light sources and writing prompts while he tries to escape the dark place. These chapters are honestly my favourites in the game. They're so moody and creative and make the most out of the blended mediums that Remedy succeed the most with. They even have a full-on musical number as one of the chapters, and it's maybe the greatest single chapter in any video game ever. I nearly cheated and made this in the number 1 joint game of the year, but I've got to stick with my guns, and there is something that I think is a little bit more deserving overall. Number 1. I mean, what else could be number 1 this year? It's Baldur's Gate 3. What an absolute bombshell of a release this was. It consumed the internet for weeks. Literal weeks. And for good reason. Larian somehow managed to boil down the magic that is playing Dungeons & Dragons to a fine essence, and imbued it with one of the best RPGs I've ever played. This game consumed my life for like a month, and I still think about it like most men think about the Roman Empire, because of the absolute magic that my first playthrough took me on. I made arguably my favourite character ever in Maxon, the Half-Elven Rogue, a character composed of 50% witty remarks and 50% raw sex appeal according to how feral people were over him online. I still get likes on my TikTok showing people how I made him to this day. While the footage you're seeing isn't Maxon, because I didn't record or stream that run, what went down was one of the most engaging narratives I've ever played. By the end of the campaign, the only characters left alive were himself, Gale, Astarion, Will, and Shadowheart. Literally everyone else either died, were killed, or left the story through choices that I stuck to. No save scumming for Maxon. By the end, I was sad to see these characters go. I had grown attached to them all through the struggle, and it felt like saying goodbye to friends. A fact that was made all the sweeter with the recent update to the game adding a reunion scene after the main story, something which was oddly meta, as I hadn't touched the character of Maxon in months, so it really was a reunion for both the character and me. It was a tough battle, but I couldn't rightfully put Baldur's Gate 3 anywhere but as my game of the year. To captivate me for 90 plus hours and stick with me to the point of wanting to start a second run, despite having other games I want to play first, it more than deserved this spot. Baldur's Gate 3 is an outstanding achievement, and one that I look forward to playing for years to come. And that of course was my list. What are yours? Let me know in the comments down below this video, as there are plenty of games I didn't include in mine that I'm sure other people loved, and I'd like to hear about all of them. While the YouTube channel has been quiet for a while now, I just wanted to thank people for watching the old content in the meantime. This year has sucked, honestly, and a bit of a struggle for me, so I appreciate those that gave us a watch and supported us on the other platforms, as well as you for watching this list. I've been Kane, and if all goes well, I'll be seeing you all soon.